Hello? Hello? Hello?
If you were alive in the late 2000s, you're probably familiar with Guitar Hero. I don't think it needs much of an introduction, but after the first game came out in 2005, those plastic guitars took over millions of homes for about half a decade. But when the original team behind Guitar Hero, Harmonix, was bought out by MTV Games, they would go on to start their own rhythm game series, which came to be known as Rock Band. In case you aren't caught up, Guitar Hero and Rock Band are rhythm game series where you can use a plastic guitar, drum, or a microphone to play along to popular music, typically to earn a high score and unlock new songs. The two series would lead the genre through the rest of the craze, and I personally would follow Rock Band starting from the second game all the way through to the latest numbered entry, Rock Band 4. But these things were everywhere. It's hard to think about today, but back then I didn't know a single person who was actively playing video games that didn't have at least one guitar controller around. In 2009 alone, those two series launched more than 10 games. Because all of the music used in these games were coming from real bands, it made perfect sense that eventually, during this guitar game fad, both of the major competitors would start releasing games based entirely around a specific band. Guitar Hero was putting out things like Guitar Hero Aerosmith and Metallica, but Rock Band would come up with something a little different. Lately, there's been some notable Beatles documentaries that have been coming out, and I've been really enjoying them. And as a fan of the Beatles and gaming, I was reminded of the Rock Band game. Announced in 2008 and then launching in 2009, the Beatles Rock Band always felt like an outlier to me in the heaps of other guitar games. Its dedication to maintaining the history and aesthetics of the Beatles in their heyday is something I never forgot about. While other band-focused rhythm games would try to capture the general vibe of that group, there was an attention to detail in the Beatles Rock Band that was just never eclipsed, and I don't think ever could be. The rhythm game boom was such a lightning in a bottle moment, and I think that the Beatles Rock Band specifically is almost like a lightning in a bottle in another bottle. So today, this won't be a review of the game of the Beatles Rock Band per se, but more a look back at how this game really captured a moment in time where Harmonix was able to recreate the story of the Fab Four in a way that we might never see again. Before I start, it's gonna be hard to talk about this without massive copyright strikes, so if you want to throw on some of your own Beatles music, I'll keep my background music low. The development for the Beatles Rock Band was supposedly started by happenstance, with MTV's president meeting George Harrison's son, and from there, talks began to bring the other remaining Beatles and their families to serve as creative consultants. Loads of people related to the Beatles came on board for the project, including Giles Martin, whose dad was producer for the majority of Beatles records. So in a funny way, we've got major players from the biggest rock and roll band ever, all sort of pitching in a small way to create this really amazing project.
Looks like they want us to talk amongst ourselves, Paul.
Yeah, I think so.
What do you think of the game?
I love it. It's
You love it?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can't play it.
Thank you.
But I think the most interesting aspect to me was the way that they depicted the world of the Beatles in the game. Obviously, this is centered around a real-life story of these four people, starting off with Liverpool in 1963 and ending with the 1969 rooftop concert. It's just that the way they captured this idealized depiction of their story that I find so appealing. John, Paul, George, and Ringo are characterized perfectly, and their models are all distinctly theirs. All of the historic venues are also closely recreated, but not just to be realistic, and instead to give you a feeling of the time. It's all relatively accurate, but I did find it a little strange that Billy Preston isn't on the rooftop during that concert. Maybe somebody with more extensive Beatles knowledge can explain, but it did really make me wish that this game came out after Rock Band 3, which brought in the keyboard, so you could have played songs like Hey Jude. For the years where the band stopped touring and focused on studio work, the backgrounds instead used these creative dreamscapes that followed the narrative of the songs. Octopus's Garden will have the Beatles roaming around underwater, or Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds will have psychedelic visualizers. One of my favorites has to be the hot air balloon segment in With a Little Help from My Friends. Those dreamscapes all have a variety to them that makes the Beatles Rock Band stand out from all the other Guitar Hero games at the time, And while the character animation can be a bit dated, I really love that they got to go creative with these studio segments. The Beatles' Love Cirque du Soleil shows debuted a few years before the Beatles Rock Band, so much of the menus and graphics are directly inspired by that, and it also suits the vibe very well. The UI during gameplay is fittingly 60s styled with brighter colors for the notes and a clean gold trim on the other elements. When I first played the game, the cyan blue note always stood out to me right away.
1, 2, 3, 4!
In the story mode, you'll get treated to these really fun visual montages that fly through the story of the band and really eloquently explain what was going on at the time. And of course, I have to shout out that amazing intro animation that plays whenever you boot the game up. It's so playful and once again summarizes this creative, idyllic version of the Beatles, and it's full of small details for fans, but also serves as an instant introduction to their story and music. I wasn't fully familiar with the Beatles when the game first came out, but having seen this trailer for the first time on GameTrailers.com, if you remember that one, it was immediately easy to understand and approachable. It has this sort of build-up throughout the animation that gets you excited to try the game out, and I think it's aged amazingly. After you finish the story mode, the intro also gets a bit of closure with a great outro animation to cap off the game. While in reality, the Beatles might not have always got along, the game shows them in the best light and the aesthetic brings that heart to it. Something I've really come to appreciate about this game, having come back to it, is how well it serves as a virtual museum of the Beatles. Without the DLC that was available at the time, the music selection can feel a little limited, but there are a lot of really cool bonus features that you can unlock by playing the game. These include things like photos and videos from across their history. Maybe for a diehard fan, these might be a little unspecial, but I think that for new fans who the game was meant for in the first place, it could be an interesting thing to rifle through. Each song unlocks 2 photos, and each photo has a short blurb full of fun facts and other interesting anecdotes from the day. It might be easy to look past these, but these are the kind of things that make people into real fans. The video clips are cool rewards as well, though I wish there were some more of them. The Beatles have a crazy amount of archival footage that has been used in a lot of those documentaries I mentioned earlier. I just watched Beatles 64, and it was funny to see a non-upscaled clip of them on the train here in Beatles Rock Band. Virtual museum games have started popping up more often in recent times, but they're obviously more often used for video game history. Playing this, I was wondering if the medium could be used for other subjects in the future too, because it does make learning about the Beatles a fun experience.
I'm changing into the suits and putting the shirts on. You feel, oh no, and then just as soon as you get on, it's all right.
The Beatles work so specifically well for something like this. Guitar Hero did Aerosmith, Metallica, and Van Halen, but from what I understand, they don't really attempt to recreate their history the same way. I can't speak too much for the Guitar Hero side since I was always more on the Rock Band side, but that's just how it looked to me. While Harmonix might have gone too far in some places, almost treating the Beatles as these perfect people, I think that the huge impact that the Beatles had on pop culture allows them to have a lot of creativity. Rock Band would eventually try to do the same thing with Green Day, but I don't think it worked out. Green Day is great, but they just don't have the same history that the Beatles do, and the game feels very forced comparatively. The intro video is shorter, there are less venues, and Green Day doesn't even have 4 band members for a full group of players. It also helps that the Beatles' discography is very diverse with a lot of experimental songs, and I'm sure being the best-selling band of all time isn't too bad either. At the end of the day, I don't think there was a single band more suited to have a game dedicated to them like this than the Beatles. Which is why I feel like this sort of thing was such a rare occurrence. The game industry needed to be in a time where development was short enough, but also before modern times where cross-promotion is mostly focused on smaller projects. We don't really see a lot of famous people showing up in video games anymore, unless it's in some sort of Fortnite ad. The remaining Beatles, as far as I know, have also aged past the point where they can be as directly involved with these sort of things. I know Paul still tours, but most new Beatles media is usually archival, like those documentaries. Not even to mention the fact that the Guitar Hero craze was kind of surprising in the first place. Rhythm games are historically unpopular, at least in the West, with most of them being carried by dedicated fans. On one hand, the Beatles are massive, so it's somewhat of a no-brainer that something like this should be successful, but with the game and music industry as it is today, it might be good to be grateful that it worked out the way it did here. Thanks for coming by for this shorter video and making it to the end. If you liked it, feel free to drop a like on the video, leave me a comment, and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff like this in the future. I'd love to know if you played the Beatles Rock Band when it was first released. For me personally, I always wanted to get those special edition guitars they made for the game, but I already had a Rock Band set, so I never got them. Either way, I hope you enjoyed hanging out here for a little bit, and I'll catch you in the next one.